What's up, folks? Casual Dad here, and I want to take a minute to revisit one of my personal favorite Necron warlords in Warhammer combat cards. He recently got a slight buff to his abilities a couple seasons back, where he still has the same hardwired ability, where while an enemy card is below 75% wounds, so it's taken a quarter of its health already, the friendly card opposite gains hardwired, boosting their attack stats by 20. So this is a slight buff because it used to be 15, but also he received some indirect buffs more recently because he is benefiting heavily from the changes to Berserk and Regen, because Necrons benefit from those across the board. So this is a pretty small buff that adds up over the course of a game, but also is dramatically increased because it also stacks with the buff to the traits that he enjoys the most. So is he better? Is he good? Because I've long since dunked on Ulthakar. He is up there with Commander Farsight and the base Ghazghkull, the non-Supreme Commander Ghazghkull, who are three of the most effective warlords I had very early on top of Zephyrblade. But Zephyrblade has continued to be fairly effective, where all of the others have kind of fallen off. Even basic Gaz is fun, but he's not particularly good compared to the other warlords you could take instead. And the same goes for Ulthakar. I do think he is the weakest of the Necron warlords even now, but let's put that to the test, okay? So we've got a max level, mine is not max level, sorry. We've got a max level sync PvP campaign going on right now. And just looking at some of the things that I really think are good with him, melee heavy with very efficient pieces, so you can have a pretty full deck. So Berserk has a very potent melee attack once it starts racking up that Berserk plus the hardwired. Then you've got a very strong melee attack, also benefits from hardwired, also has that Medicae to keep your other cards alive, and has that ranged buff where if you're shooting, he will be preventing enemies from shooting you back as aggressively. Or if you go Psychic to ready, he will also kind of help reduce incoming damage. This is a card I always reach for immediately with Ulthakar, which you should, because it's the thematic one that goes with Ulthakar, because it's his special bodyguard. Also is the crazy, crazy Scorpek Spider Destroyers. And then we throw in a couple others too, right? So one of the key things about Ulthakar's ability is that it is very, very good for low attack cards. Like a 6-cost card with has 49 attack is pretty good, but a 6-cost card with 69 attack is better. So this guy and then the endless 5-point shooting one are really good cards with Ulthakar because it really supercharges their abilities, which is why he's such a good starter warlord, because he just adds a flat number to your stats. But the higher you get in level, the less effective his flat number is. We talk about that all the time. So his ability falls off a bit, and now I don't know what he has to offer at higher level, especially looking back at him himself. We'll talk again about the deck in a minute. His stats are not great, right? So he's just over the point where he does suffer. He is vulnerable to Big Game Hunter and doesn't really have the bulk to justify that. At maximum level, we're talking base attack of 40 and 67. Not great. And base hit points of 331, which is okay, but on a card that kind of wants to stand on his own and hit stuff multiple times because of his hardwired ability, he doesn't really have the offense or the durability to justify the cost. And that's kind of my biggest holdup with him. Is like his ability is pretty decent, even still, even at max level. His stats don't hold up, and he himself, if he hits the table, I expect to lose that game, unless I'm already winning pretty handily and he's just there. I've also thrown in shields because shields really help. Seamet also has an excellent melee attack and inspiring presence to top off that damage buff. So you get inspiring presence plus your readies plus the hardwired bonus. You can swing really, really hard, and it really feels like it wants to be a melee attack. So we're going to go ahead and run this. Also, incidentally, I like Furious Charge in here because Furious Charge and Barrage can both prime your attacks later. So a card hits Furious Charge, hits something, already gets it below 25% wounds, and then, or excuse me, gives it 25% damage of its total damage, and then gives you hardwired for your follow-up attack. So Furious Charge is a way to set that up, and then Barrage is a way to set that up for your adjacent cards. You have your primary card goes Barrage, card to the right is very likely to actually get that hardwired trigger before it shoots too. And that'll come up with our second deck. We'll go ahead and try this one first. Now I'm going to talk quite a bit because Sync PvP is the slowest game speed, so it's going to go nice and slow. So we'll get to kind of watch it putt. Which cracks me up too, because it's so different from what we're used to now that we've seen the max kind of game speed here. That is not good. This is a really bad matchup just out of the gate because Ulthakar's ability requires damaging an enemy card multiple times, whereas up against Onva, I want to damage his cards as few times as possible so that I can just kill them outright without them having really beefed up stats. And it is interesting. So if you look at these two, this is a great matchup because Onva is kind of a ideal mirror for what Ulthakar is not, because his ability is percent based. It is you don't necessarily have to hit something before you get the attack buff, and it stays. That's another point we haven't talked about. Ulthakar's ability is the hardwire for destruction is cool, but it goes away. As soon as the card across either heals up or a new card is placed across from you, that attack buff is lost, which is a real bummer. Also, if you're off lane, it is lost. So I would be kind of curious to see something like the ability, but it also lingers, where like you get hardwired and it stays, and then you can get hardwired again. You could drop it back to the 10 or the 15 at that point, but if it was something that grew over time, I think Ulthakar would benefit a lot, especially in melee decks, where I really want him to perform well, and he does not really. And we'll see that there. Hardwired, but also buff the heck out of these guys melee. So, ew. And this card, I love this card. And he's only 30 points for the raw damage he puts out plus the hit points. He's very good. But you'll see in this, where I start taking these beefed up melee attacks back, that may be a problem. But he may not want to hit me with melee, and if he shoots me, I'll be just fine. But a couple limitations here too. Ulthakar is very basic. He's very straightforward, which is a good thing because he's very simple to play and you can just kind of roll with it. He's probably going to go melee because he's got a lot more cards than I do. We'll see. Yep, went for melee. I don't know that that was a great call because these two are going to be easy to finish off, but he did it. So hardwired. So you're looking at very impressive stats between hardwired and inspiring presence. That's a really high hit. But in this deck in particular, that's just melee damage to a single target. Could be completely ignored by shields, could be completely wasted on an endless card. I only need to deal this guy 49 to kill him, so meh. Save range deck he does. He does not. Yeah, here we go. Just blink down some shields. Bloop. And Necrons do have really good defensive options with Medicae and regen. Like this guy, Oricon the Diviner, is completely insane now. He really, really benefits heavily from good cost, high hit points, regen on top of the Medicae that is something of a staple for Necrons. But he doesn't have a whole lot of offensive output. His damage is good, but it's dramatically better with Inspiring Presence and Ulthakar. So he's a very hard-hitting card. But what I was saying is Endless, Shields, Fear, Taunt, all of these completely shut down your basic straight lane-to-lane melee hit. And it's one of the reasons where melee is behind ranged right now. And I talk about it all the time. But that's one of the things that holds Ulthakar back too, because again, your off-laners or your off-lane attacks do not benefit from hardwired at all, which I don't know how they would. If it's just like, if you are targeting a damage defender, you get the hardwired bonus. That's another way it could kind of be adjusted. And now I'm saying all of this assuming I'm going to lose this match. I may not. We'll see how this goes. He's only got 2 cards left in the bank. I've got a pretty good edge here. Ooh, that wasn't good. I don't even really have to deal with this guy. And the modifier means that any cards that I have that stay on the board are going to be very high ranged attacks. They're going to have very high ranged attacks. I don't really want to hit that. And there we see the benefit of those defensive readies. That's nice. We'll see if that saves me. In the end game, this is one of the end games where Ulthakar is actually better. So this is not a good matchup, but the end game is very good for Ulthakar because Ulthakar has the ranged attack where Onva does not. That's a big limiter in Onva himself that makes him a manageable matchup even for Ulthakar. So I may pull this out, but I'm not optimistic pending what else is in that deck. Especially with this thing. I don't want to be shooting that. That's a lot of range damage. Okay, let's see what else he's got. It's going to depend a lot. If the other card has enough range to kill Seamet, then I'm pretty much toast. If it does not, we have a chance. It does not. Okay. Because like I was saying, the end game for Ulthakar is that I have that really good range. Now, if his melee is enough to kill both of these, that also is a problem. But he didn't go that route. Okay. And Seamit's been on the board for a long time, so his ranged attack is very powerful. So I think I may actually pull this out. It's his melee. Oof, 147. We don't want that. 55. All right, we do want that. That's good. So we're doing well on this flank, but this flank is a problem. This guy is, yeah, ooh, man, max level on Shi. If you're going to go melee Tau, I do fairly strongly recommend doing it with Farsight. His option to fully heal stuff really helps in endgames, which is one of the things that makes him such a good starter warlord, because you're able to just give yourself that little... Oh, no. If he goes melee, I'm in real trouble. She probably will. Yep. Ouch. Okay, Navgren survived. That is good, and Navgren should survive a follow-up attack. That's excellent, too. So I can keep plinking away and maybe survive this, but I think between these two, they can fairly comfortably take me out before I can take down Onva. And so this is one of the things I mean, is that Ulthakar is completely shut down right now. Like, he has no options here in this endgame. That's in part because of the deck that I built, but also just because of his raw stats. He can't stand up to this. He's not enough of a brawler to actually deal with this. And a big part of that is he is rare, so he only has a single trait. I don't think all warlords should be epic or legendary. Maybe. I'm sort of iffy on that. They are warlords, so it does feel a little bit funny for any of them to be common. But at the same time, you should have some warlords who can stand alone on a single trait. They generally... Ulthakar is not one of those. I don't know if he didn't have enough to take me out. Surely he does. Surely he has the melee to take me out. Maybe. If I get this last shield, and he does melee, and this guy lives, I may actually have lethal. So if he messes up, I have this, but no, he got me. Okay. Yeah, so there, shut down completely by shields. Some smart play by my opponent there late game. Early game, I think he made some missed calls, but definitely made up for it. So that is one sort of version of Ulthakar. That's kind of the Ulthakar you sort of want to run based on his character and his fluff and his flavor and the ability. You want to go melee berserk. That's kind of the natural fit. Now, there is one other deck build with Ulthakar that's very effective. That is a single deck build that actually works very well and is what I'm running in the ladder. Now, you'll notice a lot of similar faces. This guy's still excellent. This guy's still just so freaking good. And then I believe I swapped out Orican for Navgran, got the target acquired in there to kind of cheese out the off-lane attacks are really good for Ulthakar because they prime your hardwired for destruction. Got my taunt in there to keep me alive, and then an 18-point filler. So the real clincher for this deck is Emberesh the Sun Eater, where mine is pretty high level, but not max level, so I enjoy getting to run him in max level campaigns. But what it comes down to here is this is a really good deck. Is it good because it's an Ulthakar deck, or is it good because it's a Sun Eater deck? And I think you can fairly comfortably say it's good because it's a Sun Eater deck, and there's very little that Ulthakar actually provides here, aside from being expensive. So that's the thing about him. Like, I really love Ulthakar. Of course, I come into this saying, am I wrong about Ulthakar? And then spend the entire video talking about how I'm not wrong. But hopefully the playtesting I'm showing here is kind of highlighting some of the problems, while also leaning on some of the strengths to show that the strengths are good, but they're not good enough to offset the problems, which are legit problems. He's going to go first. That's unfortunate. A Psyker Heavy Huron is going to be a bad matchup. But we'll see. If I can take down the bird, I got this. And I am running a range-themed deck that is very effective with this modifier, because my shooting cards get more powerful every turn. And that deployment was intentional. Some of the things that you can do in PvP are very different than what you can do in just kind of ladder play, because I'm against a human, and so that human actually doesn't know what I'm doing. And so I played Navgran, which tells him nothing whatsoever about this deck, except that it does have either melee or ranged, maybe both. And that is the trick here. I want to keep my actual deck type a secret as long as possible. Go ahead and pop that there. No matter what goes in the middle, target acquired should be a useful trait to tag it with. And we'll see. In the last match that I won with Ulthakar, I did this, and then I actually moved this to the left lane after deployment, which I may do again here. Boop. Hello. And taking that guy out is definitely not as good as taking out the Lord of Change, but we should be okay. I do not love losing that target acquired here and not on the chicken, but we'll see. There's the Helldrake is the Hell Turkey. Lord of Change is the chicken. just your Chaos terminology here, that's all direct from the Imperial Bestiary of the main Chaos pieces. Okay, so we're going to throw our Berserk in here. Throw our Medicae in here. Love it. And you'll get to see fairly quickly what's going on here. Now, not as quickly, because now you can cheese this a little bit. So you saw that Prime for Hardwired for Destruction trigger in the middle there for the offlane attack. That's one of the things that makes Barrage super effective with Ulthakar, because you're both triggering an additional card to get Hardwired for Destruction, but then having it hit your primary target. So Target Acquired is really good, and Barrage are really good, and they're very good in combination because you get the best out of both attackers, both from Ulthakar's ability. So instead of gaining 20, you're gaining 40 total ranged attack, which is great, right? Is it enough? Eh. And again, it does give you an advantage, but is it more than the flat buff, random, but still flat buff that you could be getting from Nemesis or Zendrek for basically a flat cost? Is it really better? I don't really know. Probably not. Splatty, splatty, splat. And it is good there that we actually lost that, because that gives me opportunity to redeploy and react to what he's doing. And he is redeploying first. He can't one-shot the Sun Eater. I can almost one-shot the Hell Chicken, especially with the growing buff to range damage. That's not the hell. That's the chicken. It's not the Hell Chicken. I'm mixing up my Chaos Bestiary now. Okay. But yeah, so end of the day, there is definitely something to Ulthakar. I really like the mechanic. I particularly like the idea, but he just doesn't quite get there. And I really want him to, because he's just a cool warlord, cool abilities, a lot of potential. This may not save him. Let's see what this goes. I may end up playing Ulthakar early on this one. I don't want to, but I might. You're gonna do Psychic. What are you doing? You're gonna try melee? Of course not. You're gonna go Psychic. Well, that's a lot of damage. I do love how staggeringly high the damage can get on that card when it doesn't die. It died. Okay. And so now this is not lost, but it's just like the last game. Same thing, where these are two roughly equal warlords that should be on fairly equal footing, and that should be totally possible for me to win this. And it's going to be close-ish, but I'm going to fall short, because Ulthakar is just not quite there. And you're going to see me lose by basically the same margin with a far more powerful deck, where I do think this ranged barrage deck is dramatically more powerful than the melee one, just because of the extra utility, and it's not going to be enough. Because Endless. So yeah, so Endless, the last game it was Shields, this game it was Endless. Between the two, they just shut off so many of your advantages that you just don't have enough to pull this out. Because here, Sun Eater taking out that middle card should be enough for me to take out the chicken, but it's not, because Endless. So it came back there. Ugh. And part of this could have been misplay on my part. So I didn't need to play Target Acquired when I did. I probably should have held on to it and actually deployed it against the Hell Turkey, or against the chicken, and I didn't. And that may have been enough to decide this game. I could have held it in hand for a little bit longer and then dropped it later, and that may have been enough to turn this, because it really has been this card that's determined this game. And if he was gone, it'd be much closer. But still, that's the kind of margin you're talking about, where it's just right there, where Ulthakar just doesn't quite meet the kind of power curve you're up against. And I love it. So still, my personal suggestion is tough to balance, because say, for example, you went with my first suggestion where the hardwired was permanent. So you get hardwired, and then you continue to actually build up the hardwired as kind of like a growing rage, like a secondary berserk. That would make him really good with berserk cards. Wouldn't really add much. It would make the barrage cards just completely off the rails. So I don't know that that would be great, and especially in early games. Or low-level games, that I think would give Ulthakar a bit too much of an advantage. Now, making it be whatever the defender is, so it triggers if your defender is at fraction health, whether or not the one across from you is at fraction health. That one does remove the example I just talked about, but is much more common, where you're attacking off lane, attacking something damaged off lane, and you want extra damage on your off lane attacks. So I don't really know. I don't know what to do with Ulthakar, but I can fairly comfortably say that no, I was not wrong about Ulthakar. He still falls a little bit short in the middle and late game, and he's still so cool that I would love to have him perform a little bit better. So that's just my 2 cents. Um, yeah, I am not sure how I would fix him in his current iteration without doing a complete redesign. But yeah, I would be curious to see what comes next because I do appreciate the buff. I don't think it's enough. That's it. Okay, till next time. Cheers.